Today we're going over combinatorics, and part of combinatorics is going to be blockers and removal effect, things that I overlooked quite heavily when I was early on in my poker career, but later came to respect. So here's an example of why combinatorics matter. In this river spot, let me go over the prior action. So we're on the button with pocket nines, under the gun raises, we 3-bet, under the gun calls, queen 9-5, we c-bet 1/3, call, jack of spades, we c-bet 2/3 with our set, under the gun calls again, 6 of clubs on the river, and the opponent snap shoves 63 into 77 big blinds, and we're sitting here with nines. Odin showed us that pocket nines is worth slightly more than nothing as a call, about 4 big blinds. We don't have pocket nines that block club flushes, obviously, because the 9 of clubs was on the flop. Aces with the ace of clubs is worth close to 70 big blinds as a call. So making so much money here calling with the aces with the ace of clubs, even though it's just a single pair versus a set. Why is this? It's just because of our understanding of blockers and combos. When we have the ace of clubs, we're removing so much of his value. He's going to have in his range playing like this, he's going to have ace 5 of clubs, ace 7 of clubs, ace 8 of clubs, ace 10 of clubs, ace jack of clubs, some ace king of clubs, especially when you're playing against passive opponents that don't check raise bluff flops a lot. You'll have there will be a lot of flush draws in their range. We even saw kings with the king of clubs being close to indifferent on this river, just because it's not blocking those 8 combos of nut flushes. So that's why combinatorics matter. Here's the PIO sim for the same spot. I use slightly different preflop parameters, but you can see here PIO had it at 90 aces with the ace of clubs, 93 big blinds as a call. Aces, no club, worth nothing. And 93 big blinds in one hand is obviously massive. This can be the difference between a winning and a losing player. If you're playing, 5-10 cash, this is $900. $900 spread out over 20 hours of play is $45 an hour. So making this call, could be the difference between a winning cash game player and a losing cash game player, and just understanding that nines is worth close to nothing and aces with ace of clubs is worth everything. So today we're going to go over combinatorics, the basics, removal effects, weighting, and then we're going to go over some application and examples using solvers. So counting combos, the basics. So there's 6 combos of each pocket pair. If we look at pocket aces, we have the ace of spades, and that can be matched with the ace of hearts, ace of clubs, ace of diamonds twice. 16 combos of any 2 random cards, ace king, queen 10, 6-5, etc. So basically, ace king, you're going to get ace king about 3 times as much as pocket aces. There's 1,326 preflop combinations of hands possible. So a shortcut, if the button is raising, the button's raising 50% of hands, what I do to find out how many combos that is in game is I just multiply that by 10. So he's going to have about 500 combos, and then you just increase it by about 1/3. So, 1/3 of 500 is 160. So I say roughly he has 660 combos pre-flop. If the guy's raising under the gun and you're trying to figure out how many combos that is, that's he's raising 20% under the gun. That means on average, he's going to have, if there were 1,000 pre-flop combinations, he would have 200 combos, but there's about a third more than 1,000. So he's going to have about 250 pre-flop combinations. Hopefully that makes sense. It's not too confusing. So here are your 6 combos of aces. The ace of spades, ace of diamonds, ace of spades, ace of clubs, ace of spades, ace of hearts. And then you just, ace of diamonds has 3 combinations as well, but we already counted them. Here is the visual of your 16 combos of all other hands. So the ace of spades can be accompanied with the king of spades. The ace of spades can be accompanied with the king of clubs. The ace of spades can be accompanied with the king of hearts, and the ace of spades can be accompanied with the king of diamonds. So that's 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ace of spades combos, ace king is 4 combos here. And then you're just going to do that same thing with each suit. So we just went over ace of spades, then you go to ace of clubs. Well, the ace of clubs can be matched with the king of clubs, the king of hearts, the king of spades, and the king of diamonds. And then the same thing with heart combinations, ace of hearts with the king of hearts, and then ace of hearts with the 3 other suits. So there's 4 combinations that start with the ace of spades, ace king with the ace of spades. There's 4 combinations of hands that start with the ace of clubs and the 4 kings, ace of hearts and the 4 kings, and the ace of diamonds and the 4 different kings. So that's 16 combinations total. And then out of those 16 combinations, as you can see here, we have 4 combinations of suited ace king, and then we have 12 combinations of offsuit combinations, a mix here. So for every ace deuce suited, there's going to be 4 combos. I'm sorry, for every 16 combos of ace deuce, there's going to be 4 combos of ace deuce suited, and then 12 combos of ace deuce off. Let's see. Here is a chart of opening ranges. This is about 25% of hands. When you see in this top right triangle is all suited hands. So we have the ace-x suited. For each one of these boxes, there are 4 combinations. Just like we just went over, there's 4 combinations of ace-king suited, 4 combinations of ace-queen suited, all the way down, and then the same thing with all these king-x suited. And then the bottom triangle here is all of your offsuit combos. So we have ace-king offsuit with 12 combinations. So there are substantially more offsuit combinations than there are suited. So the tiles are kind of a little bit misrepresentative of the number of combos, right? Because in this ace-king suited box, it is referring to 4 different hand combinations. And this ace-king off box, it's referring to 12 different hand combinations. So these boxes are not weighted to the frequency at which the hand combinations occur. So just keep that in mind. And then also going down the middle here, these boxes represent pocket pairs, which only have 6 combinations of hands. So these are the 6 combinations of aces are more frequent than ace-king suited, but less frequent than ace-king off. So yeah, kind of basic stuff, but incredibly important, and I think often overlooked. So we're going to go over removal effects. On a flop of ace 7-3, there are no longer 6 possibilities of pocket aces for top set. And that is because there is an ace already on the board. These three combinations are impossible for your opponent to have because of removal effects. So when you see this board, we can quickly say, instead of 6 combos of aces, 7s, and 3s occurring, there's only going to be 3 of each. So in total, against a range of someone that's playing 100% of hands, he will have 9 combos of sets. So if this person with 100% of hands bets this flop and only has value bets, yeah, sure, he will have 9 sets, but he's also going to have 12 combos of ace king, 12 combos of ace queen, 12 combos of ace jack. Usually it would be 16 combos of ace king, but there's an ace on the board. So we're reducing the 16 combos of ace king gets reduced by a quarter down to 12. And usually there's 16 combos of ace queen, but the ace of spades is missing. So now that means the opponent with 100% of hands can only have 12 combos of ace queen, 12 combos of ace jack, 12 combos of ace 10. So it's important that when you're facing bets and you're trying to range your opponent, you know, let's say you defend the big blind, the button raises and you defend the big blind, and this is the board. Your opponent bets a third pot. How much more likely is it for him to have ace X, you know, ace king, ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, ace 9, ace 8, all the way down to ace 2, rather than a set? So of all of those hands I just mentioned, ace king, ace queen, those are 12 combos each, and then sets are only 3 combos each. So you're not dealing with a set very often at all, even if the person is only value betting top pair plus, let's say. So this is removal effects. Kind of talked about this a little bit, but on this board of ace 7-3, when the button raises and we defend the big blind, since the ace of spades is on the board, the button cannot have ace king of spades, ace of spades, king of clubs, ace of spades, king of hearts, ace of spades, king of diamonds. So these 4 combos are removed. And if he had 16 combos of ace king preflop, he now can only have 12 combos of ace king. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that is how removal effects work. Now let's go over weighting. So this is going to get a little bit confusing here. So after you're counting your combos, you also need to do a little bit of what I call weighting. So if we raise under the gun and the button calls, you guys are 50 big blinds deep. On a flop of ace 7-3, if we're trying to count sets, we could quickly say, oh, okay, well, the guy could have 3 combos of aces, 3 combos of 7s, and 3 combos of 3s. If you were looking at this very in a shallow way. But we need to remember that when we raise under the gun and the button calls, we can expect our opponents to 3-bet aces at close to 100% frequency. So he can't have aces on this board. So we need to realize that he has 0 combos of aces on this board, or close to 0. And then let's say it's a opponent playing well, but kind of tight. So maybe he flats all of his pocket 7s, but only flats 3s about 1/3 of the time, roughly. You think that maybe he would flat 3s, but most likely he would fold 3s. So if he bets the flop, we can assume that he's going to have all 3 combos of 7-7, because 7s play like this preflop. And then instead of giving him 3 combos of pocket 3s, let's just give him 1 combo of pocket 3s, because we know that he's kind of a tighter guy who would mostly fold 3s preflop. So let's say we bet and he raised the flop. if we're trying to understand what his value range is, we could say that he has 4 combos of sets, and then we're going to weigh that against what other types of hands he could have. Could he have worse? Could he have ace-x for value? How likely is he to raise a hand like 5-6 of diamonds? Any type of 5-6 suited, any type of 4-5 suited, which he might have, let's say he has 100% of 4-5 and 5-6 suited preflop. We now know that there's 8 combos of those, but how often is he going to raise those 8 combos? And this is the type of a brief analysis that you want to be doing on these types of boards. It's a little bit confusing and it takes some time to learn, but once implemented, you will see results slowly. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And sure, you could play poker without ever learning any of this stuff and just go ahead with a mediocre to low win rate by just relying on your other strengths. But this is an important thing to understand and think about. If you have let's say this opponent might be raising ace queen, ace jack, ace 10 on the flop. We know like half of the time he's going to have, let's say, 12 combos of ace queen, 12 combos of ace jack, and 12 combos of ace 10. That's 36. And if he was only going to raise, let's say maybe he raises those hands half of the time on the flop, he has 18 combos of weaker or non-nutted ace-x, and then he has 4 combos of sets, 22 combos of a value range. And then you're weighing that against what could he be bluff raising with? And would he bluff raise this flop? And what hands would he use? And then trying to come up with some sort of a strategy to combat that type of value bluff relationship. So now the question for you guys is, how many combos of ace 7 suited would this button player have on this flop? Just take a second to think about it. Let's assume, firstly, that he plays 100% of his ace 7 suiteds and his ace 3 suiteds preflop. So for ace 7 suited, he could have ace 7 of hearts or ace 7 of clubs for 2 combos. What gets confusing is if he's 3-betting, how is he going to play these suited aces? Is he going to 3-bet or call or fold them? So against a standard tournament recreational, we could assume that he's mostly just going to be folding these hands pre-flop. So if he were to raise this board, maybe we give him, instead of the 4 combos that we just assigned him, maybe he only flats, let's just say he flats half of his ace-x suiteds. So instead of having 4 combos of 2 pair, now he only has 2 combos of 2 pair. So if we now go back and look at what his complete value range might look like if he were to raise us on this flop, we're dealing with 3 sets of 7s, 1 set of 3s, that's 4. Let's say he plays a third of ace queen, ace jack, ace 10 as a raise. That's 36 divided by 3 is 12. So 12 plus the 4 sets is 16. And then we gave him two pair combos. So he has 20 hands of strongest value that raises this flop. And then, you're thinking about what he raises as a bluff. I think most players probably find it hard to find a ton of bluffs on this flop. Definitely, I would take the under on 20 combos of bluffs to be raising with that value range. So getting a little dense, but this is how, to beat higher stakes cash, higher stakes tournaments, you kind of want to start thinking on this level. This is, very in-depth analysis, but at least understanding the basics where, your opponent likely has only 4 possible combinations of sets on this flop versus all the other hands he can have is the important part. All right. So applications and examples. So where I use combinatorics very often is when I am bluff catching, and then also bluffing, to be aware of how my opponent could exploit me if he understands combinatorics. But we're going to go over a bluff catching example. So on this board, let's just pull up our sim. So we defend big blind, cutoff raises, we defend big blind, 9-7-7 flop. We checked the original raiser, and the original raiser is going to see about, let's call it close to 100% of the time. And we have, let's just say we have like the ace 10. Board runs out, 3 of clubs. Check, check. Turn goes check, check. River is the deuce of diamonds, and cutoff bets about 80% pot. We have ace 10 off. Our call has to be good here about 30% of the time. So we want to be trying to think if he can come up with enough bluffs here. When we think about his range, he's raising about 36% of hands pre-flop. That's roughly 500 combos of hands. His value range that he might take this line with would be pocket pairs above the 9, let's say 10s, jacks, queens, kings, aces. There's 6 combos each of those. I think a decent chunk of those are betting the turn. That was like 30 combos, half of which I think bet the turn, so like 15 combos of overpairs. Your 9, he's going to have a ton of 9x, right? He's going to have 12 combos of ace 9, 12 combos of king 9, 12 combos of queen 9, 12 combos of jack 9, half of which bet the turn. So value range, let's just say his river value range is around 80 to 100 combos. Go back here. Very, very rough, very rough math. So 80 to 100 combos of, just call it 100 combos of value on the river. We only have to be good 1 in 3 times when we make the call. So he needs to come up with roughly 50 combos of bluffs, 60 combos of bluffs for us to break even. So let's look at all the possible bluffs that he could use here. There's 16 combos of 10 jack, 16 combos of queen 10, 16 combos of king 10, 16 combos of king queens, 16 combos of king jack, 16 combos of queen jack. He has, I don't think he's turning ace-x into a bluff. He has all those 5-6 suited, 8-10 suited, jack 8, queen 8, king 8 suited, 4-5 suited. So if we only had to be good here 1 in 3 times, and he roughly has 100 value combos that are betting this river, things are looking quite favorable for a call on this specific run out. I would hero call here much wider than GTO would suggest, and then there are boards and situations where I would call much tighter than GTO suggests. So I think you can, point being here is if you do the analysis and you look at all the different combinations of hands that he could get to this river in this spot, especially if it's an aggressive cutoff, you can print a lot of money here by hero calling quite wide, like even any ace high. Whereas if the board is something like king, queen, jack, and he bets, you know, you can start folding second pair or top pair to some opponents because of the cutoff, what the cutoff's range looks like, and his bet aggression, and the amount of possible bluffs you could have on rivers on a board of king, queen, jack versus 9-7-7. So hopefully that all makes sense. Go to the next slide. So more combo counting. The hijack raises preflop. We defend the big blind with queen 4 suited. Let's look at the sim on this one. This is a hijack's range preflop. It's going to be 29% of hands or 400 combos. As for queen X that he's going to have, he's going to be raising as wide as queen 6 suited. Our range will have queen X down to queen 2 suited, and we'll have down to queen 8 off. So we check. We can expect hijack to bet at close to 100% frequency. This is a hand I played a couple weeks ago as well, and I had queen deuce suited, and I just called the flop, and I was checking to make sure that that was okay. If we raise the flop with queen deuce suited, he's going to have, by the river, if we raise flop and bet, he's going to have a decent amount of queen X. So we can count those combos now. We have a queen, so he has 4 combos of ace queen. We had queen deuce of spades, so he can have the queen of clubs and the 4 different aces. He can have the queen of clubs and the 4 different kings. He can have the queen of clubs and the 4 different jacks, and the 4 different tens. So that's 16 combos there. He can have pocket nines for 3 combos of pocket nines. So that's 20 combos of hands that beat us. And he's started the hand with about 380 combos. So he's going to be beating us. His hand is going to be better than ours about 1 in 15 times, let's say. If we raise flop, bet, half of the hands that call on the river are going to be hands that beat us anyways, so it's not a super profitable line. We are getting value, we're getting value on the flop check raise by worse hands, and we're barreling turn and getting called by worse hands. So we're getting 2 streets of added value, but we do need to keep in mind that even though we have trips, he does have a hand that he has 20 combos of queen X on this board, or queen X or better on this board. So that's why you're seeing queen deuce, queen 3, queen 4 played as a high frequency call on this board. If we, let's say we raise flop here to 40%, and then we just barrel on blanks, barrel and then shove on blanks. So of course we're getting money and good on the flop. And we bet 2/3, and we're going to be getting money and very good on the turn as well. But on like a blank river, we shove our queen deuce as the solver would have us do. On this river, look at how much queen X he has. King, queen, queen, jack, queen 10, queen 9, queen 8. He has about 34 combos that call this river, and about half of those beat us. So while we're, this river bet, while it looks good, isn't that great. Like half of the time, close to half of the time that we get called, we're beat. So this river bet is not like printing a ton of money. Whereas if we just check call flop, we can induce a lot of bluffs from his range on the turn or river and or river. And then the additional benefits of calling with queen deuce on the flop is if turn goes check check, you can just go pot or overbet with your trips. The solver likes to go. We can look at that line in a second. You know, our hand is not that vulnerable on the flop, so you know it's fine to play as a check call. You're protecting yourself. I mean, the value of raising versus calling is quite similar. Let's look at what happens when we call flop and turn goes check check. So let's say he doesn't decide to bet turn. He doesn't bluff. Likely has a showdown value like ace high or pocket eights, pocket sevens, maybe a weak nine. Three of spades on the river. The solver is going to say we should like bet 60% pot with queen X and 9X and protect our range because we're betting, you know, we're protected against raises because we're using the same size with our weaker hands and our stronger hands. But in, you know, in practice, let's see here. Queen X goes mostly 33 or 66% pot, and then our 9X goes the same sizes, and we can't be exploited if he decides to raise. You know, in practice, I think that when hijack checks back on this turn, his range is much more capped than it should be. And we're dealing more with more ace high, low pair type of a range rather than you know, some tricky checkbacks with queen X and 9X and overpairs. So I think versus that range, like we can just go, you know, bet like 15 here. So point being is even just because we check called flop doesn't mean we're not getting a lot of money in. When we're still, the worst case scenario is he checks turn and we can just overbet river and get called by a lot worse, like half the time. So, you know, in game, my understanding of just like quickly counting like how many combos of queen X he has on this flop and realizing that like my queen two is not the nuts for 50 big blinds, I think was pretty important. Some more examples. So for three betting ranges, blockers play a huge role. That's why we see, you know, when the button opens, we're in the small blind. This is our strategy. You notice how much junk ace X offsuit we're using to three bet here. And that's primarily because we have that ace blocker. And then the, you know, you see the king five, king six, king seven suited being three bet here at a very high frequency because we have those blockers. The rest of the hands are kind of for value, you know, like a hand like king queen off, like we don't mind getting flatted because we're playing the button who has a, you know, a wide range and we have two decent high cards. But this, like if you have a hand like ace seven off, you do such a good job of removing all of this is the button's strategy versus a small blind three bet. You do with a hand like ace seven off, you do such a good job removing all of these continues. Like look at, you know, ace nine off plus is pure continued. Every ace X suited is either flatted or four bet. And this, you know, this ace X is a massive part of the button's continuing range. It's, you know, it seems like it's almost about 25 or 30%, maybe even more of his continuing range facing a three bet. So when we block, when we have that just ace, any card, ace seven off, and it, you know, ace seven off is going to perform very poorly as a call pre-flop. But if we, you know, if we have a blocker to like all of this value flatting and four betting, that's why we're using, you know, ace seven off in these spots. Where, you know, almost all of our three bets with shorter stack sizes are going to be using ace X. The three bet bluffs are going to come from ace X and king X just because of how well we block continues. Let's look at another example. So under the gun raises, we're on the button. Let's look at our three bet bluffs. It's ace 10 off, king jack off, and then these ace X suited. King 9, King 8, King 6, King 5, King 4. These hands just do such a great job of blocking. These are the continues of the under the gun player. With that ace blocker, we're blocking this whole region here. King blocker, we're blocking all of this region in here, which is like, you know, a massive part of the continuing range. And then additionally, you know, when you have a shorter SPR and you get flatted with an ace or a king, just those cards can make high card hands that, you know, will be good at showdown some percentage of the time if they hit their pair, you know, a decent percentage of the time when they hit their pair. So, you know, blockers are very important. We're going to go back to the example I had at the very beginning before the webinar started. So I was playing this tournament last week, 100 big blinds deep, under the gun raises, we 3-bet nines on the button. It's queen 9-5 flush draw, check. We c-bet a third, call, jack of spades, check. We c-bet 2/3, call, 6 of clubs, recreational player just instantly all in. First 63 big blinds into 77 big blinds. And what was fascinating about this hand was pocket nines is only making about 4 big blinds as a call on the river. And pocket aces with the ace of clubs was making 70 big blinds on the river. This hand took me a long time. You know, I ended up folding, and I just thought it was a funny hand because how much more I wanted to have just like a single pair rather than I did a set in this spot. Because if we take a deeper look at his range, like when he shoves this river, his value range, I think, can really only be flushes. I don't think queens can shove this river. I don't think queens will shove this river. You know, something that recreational players are bad at are getting value, are getting thin value. So especially versus a rec, I don't think that he's going for thin value here with queens, queen jack, like maybe some king 10. However, when he snap shoves, like I think thinner value hands have to have a decision to make when the board changes. So with an instant all in on the club, I think we can rule out like king 10, queen jack, pocket queens, pocket jacks almost 100% of the time. And we're basically just looking at ace high clubs, king high clubs, 10 jack of clubs, and then bluffs. And when we look at his bluffing range, his bluffs have to have some sort of a showdown. Like he's not going to be calling. I can't find any hands that call this turn that don't have any showdown value. Like he's going to have jack X or queen X at a minimum. So we would be turning those hands into a bluff. And I don't think he's instantly turning those hands into a bluff because they have showdown value. You know, it's a difficult decision to make. And you know, when you go back and you look at solver and you look at calling with aces with the ace of clubs versus nines, no club, and you see the difference, 70 big blinds versus 4 big blinds, it's just quite wild when we're considering, you know, a set versus single pair bluff catching on this river. You know, this illustration more than anything should make you understand that it's going to be very important when you're playing to be considering blockers, combinatorics, when you're making decisions, or you're just going to be throwing away money. It's something that, you know, you cannot ignore at some point in your poker career or journey. You know, and I double checked this with Pio, and I tried to use ranges that I actually thought the recreational player would play facing my big 3-bet. And Pio came up with even more of a discrepancy, had aces valued at like 90 big blinds. So this is definitely a legitimate solution. Oh yeah, here's the Pio sim. Same exact spot. We have aces showing a profit of 93 big blinds. You know, once again, if you're playing 5-10, 93 big blinds, that's $930. Let's say you only played, let's say you only played 90 hours of 5-10 in your life. That's, you know, that's $10 an hour that's added to your hourly just from this one decision point for this one hand. So you absolutely need to be thinking about these things. Okay, some quick examples. Here's some good ones. Under the gun raises, we flat the button. The solver has us just betting a ton on this flop. We are only checking 36% of the time. Why does the button bet so much of this on this flop? Well, he has 3 combos of pocket 5s, 3 combos of pocket 6s, 3 combos of pocket 7s. He has 4 combos of 8-9 suited. He has 2 combos of 5-6 suited. He has 2 combos of 5-7 suited. He has 2 combos of 6-7 suited. And then he has flush draws. He's going to have a lot of 9-10 for backdoor. I'm sorry, for gut shot straight draws. He's going to have 8-10 suited. So not only does the button have a ton of value, but he has a lot of hands that have very high equity. That's why you see such a high betting frequency on a board like this. And then you compare and contrast that to a board like Ace-8-2. Under the gun raises, button calls. You know, realistically, how many hands does the button have that can see bet this board and want to bet 3 streets? Very few, right? A hand like Ace Queen, Ace Jack, Ace 10, Ace 9, you know, doesn't want to bet 3 streets for large sizing versus under the gun range. You know, when we're talking about 3 street big betting, it's going to be Ace-8 suited, Ace-Deuce suited, pocket 8s, pocket 2s, and we know from earlier that there are just not that many combos of those types of hands. So that's why you see the button with a very high checking frequency. We had 70%, close to 70% check on this board from the button, versus the hand before was 36% check. You know, and I didn't say this, but not only does button have a lot of good hands on this flop, he has a lot of good hands that are gonna be able to bet 3 streets. You know, all of the hands that I mentioned, sets, 2 pairs, straights, are going to be able to bet 3 streets and, you know, shove big shoves on river on many runouts. And, you know, if draws complete, his semi bluffs will get a bet very large on river. So whenever you have this, you know, tons of combos of value, and in addition, tons of draws, high equity draws that get a bet very large, you'll see a larger betting frequency on the flop. That's why you see so much of this, you know, random king jack off, king queen off being it's bet such a high frequency, ace jack off, king 10 suited, queen 10 suited, you know, queen 9 suited. All these hands get to bet because it's, you know, this range is backed up with so much strength, and you just don't get that on Ace-8 2. All right, thank you guys for viewing. And I hope you guys have success at the tables.